Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. I have an amazing guest, Weston Zimmerman, founder of Synced Up. Thanks so much for joining us for the show today, Weston.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Um, yeah, I love it because you not often do we get somebody who works with so many landscapers. So your perspective, I think, is going to be really valuable for local listeners. Weston was working with an organization, still kind of maybe at arm's reach.
Well, they're 10 minutes from my place here, so
Yeah.
all right. Yeah.
Anyway, Tussey Landscaping, back in the day, whatever called 2016-ish. And you realize that there was this big gap in, how they were approaching doing the work that they were doing and trying to be profitable while doing it, which kind of inspired what is now the project or the company you founded, Synced Up. So can you give the audience just a quick kind of Coles Notes summary so they can have an understanding of who they're listening to and kind of what you're up to today?
Yeah, so I started working for Tassie Landscaping when I was 16 years old before I even had a driver's license or anything. I was biking to work. And I just started as a laborer, and I was honestly just a teenager looking for a job. And I loved working outdoors, and I loved creating things and artistic things. So that was kind of where I went to. And as I a lot of my life story, really, really short, is, I got married and suddenly was more interested in getting ahead and having a stable career. And so I was asking for more responsibility at the company, and the owners gave it to me. And that pursuit of helping grow the business, run things better, was what the first kind of problem was. Is we were entirely on paper, and so we were looking for other products, and we started using other products that frankly we really liked, and they're still in the market today. They're good products. The problem was, though, is we wanted to have a system that would not only allow us to do the operational stuff like the scheduling, the invoicing, blah 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 blah, but also do what we call the whole know your numbers thing, meaning making sure that we're charging the correct rates. Like, what's your man hour rate? Well, it's more than the new kid on the block, and it's not as much as the most experienced company in town. No, throw that out. What do I actually need to charge to be profitable? We wanted to actually know our numbers, and then we wanted to also track our jobs after we were done estimating them and completing them, to make sure that our original estimate was actually in line with what we were able to produce.
Yeah, cool.
So all of that did not, like, the whole operational standpoint and the know your numbers standpoint did not exist in one product. And that's where basically what happened is I came home from work one day. My dad was working for a company. He was working with this company that did software development, and he was testing a software project on his laptop on the back patio after dinner. And I was like, "What are you doing?" I was curious. We were trying to solve these problems ourselves, and he showed me what he was doing, and boom, that's where the light bulb went on. Like, dude, we need to do this. The most naive, we need to do this moment I ever had, but here we are, nonetheless.
Okay, awesome. So, and now here you are. It's 2024, as we record this podcast. Um, that's what, 8 years later, or I guess, yeah, 8 years later from kind of Tussey. But now that you've come through this, you've got a bunch of clients on this platform, you're helping solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. And the theme of this whole show is this idea of, like, what's the primary growth constraint holding entrepreneurs back in the green industry? What do you see as, like, some of the stuff holding people back right now that they need to consider and figure out how to deal with?
Well, at a really high level, if we're like, I'm going to speak to the most common segment of businesses, the businesses between 500K and 5 million in revenue. The most common thing, high level, I see is the struggle to move beyond being an owner operator that knows how to do everything and focuses on being a craftsman and doing high quality work, and transitioning to not being an owner operator, but being a business owner and working on the business instead of in the business. That challenge is extremely hard. As a product here at Sync, that we say know your numbers, price your jobs for profit, all of that stuff. but all of that stuff is just a means to an end. It's, you know your numbers so that you can be profitable, so that you can own a business that doesn't own you, so that you can work normal 10-hour days instead of 16-hour days. And so the primary growth constraint is the mindset of I know how to do the work versus I am a business owner running a business.
Awesome. Now it's cool you say it that way specifically, because we've heard people mention on the show mindset being a big thing holding people back, and this idea that a company's success is really directly related to how successful an owner thinks it can be, right?
1,000%.
But
Yeah.
what you said there is a bit more specific about owner operator working in the business, knows how to do things, craftsman, successful business per se, or a really good job but maybe longer hours than hopeful, versus a business owner. So when you say it's difficult for people to transition, what is it that usually makes them not want to transition?
Well, I mean, entrepreneurs won't grow into pain. So if growth looks like now I have to answer even more phone calls, now I have to deal with even more employee issues, now I have to deal with even more problems, they're not going to grow. And I don't necessarily I that's not all bad. I have zero shade to throw at that. Like there's plenty of our customers even and plenty of people in this space that are saying, no, I'm good. I don't want to
Yeah.
be $1 million business. I want to have my 5 team members. I want to have my trucks. Yep, I'm going to be the craftsman. I know it. I knowingly know that. And that's the choice I'm making for my life, which is totally cool. As long as you are a sellable asset because you are the business.
Right.
So once you know now that no, I'm going to pursue the owner operator model, nothing wrong with that. Trust me, it's a lot simpler to life. But once you know that, now you have to be like, okay, cool. I'm not building a sellable asset. I'm not going to be able to sell this thing other than maybe the assets of the equipment or buildings that I
Right.
have. And I'm not going to be able to retire on that. So therefore, this business has to be cranking cash during the time that I am running it.
Operating. Yeah.
Yes. And what that means is pay yourself a market rate salary, plus be cranking cash into other assets that actually will set you up long term so that the day you decide to stop working, you're prepared.
Right. And whether that be real estate, other business investments, retail stock portfolios, whatever, you name it.
I
Make
mean,
sure you're getting.
I know people that are building buildings to run their landscape business out of in prime real estate locations strategically so that when they decide to stop working, they'll be able to rent out that building into 4 different compartments and generate amazing recurring revenue and have an asset.
Yeah, that's cool. So I think what you said there too is makes a lot of, if it's an intentional decision, no issue, be the craftsman. And one of the things I think a lot of people forget, that if you decide to be the craftsman, to your point, you can charge a premium because you have the craftsman, the master craftsman on site.
Yes, exactly. People
So,
are buying you because of you.
right.
They're buying the artist. I could go paint a picture, but that thing's worthless compared to an artist with a name.
Yeah. And then, which then can do what they, you're talking about crank cash, right? Because you are charging a premium, and people more often than not, good customers are willing to pay that premium. Now, let's say I'm in that position currently and I want to transition. What do you see as like one of the first couple of things that someone actually has to do in order to make that leap?
So it's basically a game of building systems and processes. And it's tough because it's always easier to just do the stupid task yourself instead of building a system and process that now someone else can follow the instructions and do the tasks themselves. And then the most common one in this industry is like estimating. Most business owners, they're the only person in their business that can produce an accurate estimate to close a job.
Right.
Or they're the only person in the business that can lead and manage a construction job site. And systems and processes to make it possible for someone else on your team to manage it, at least start off with maybe 20% of the time, then half the time, then 3/4 of the time, then eventually all the time, is key. And one of the ways you can do that, it's like, I mean, picture doing brain surgery on the owner operator's head. All you're doing is you're pulling that information out of their head and putting it into a repeatable system and process. For estimating, that's like using a software like Synced Up And then instead of you doing the magic of like, hey, I'm bidding a job. Well, how much stone is that going to take? How much mulch is that going to take? How much topsoil is that going to take? And you just answer bam, 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 bam. It's like, how did you come up with that number? I don't know. I just know. It's just experience.
Right.
Take that magic and put it into templates and production rates inside of a software like SyncedUp. And guess what? Now even an office admin can build an accurate quote. We have customers. This one guy, he has his 12-year-old son building $80,000 outdoor living spaces quotes.
Yeah.
In his software because he built the templates and production rates, and all he tells them is, "Here's the measurements. Use that template. Go."
Yeah. Well, and I think what you said at the very beginning too, around like an accurate estimate is one thing, but then comparing the actual to the estimate,
yeah,
you get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter.
Exactly. Picture a flywheel. Every time you go around it, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, more and more accurate. And there's two main profit killers for contractors. And both the owner operator model and the business owner model are susceptible to them. And it's you get the math wrong. That's the one problem. B, you get the resources, the estimated resources in the job wrong when you're actually bidding this. So what I mean by that is, getting the math wrong is like you continue to charge $75 an hour, but you never actually do the math to figure out like, is that even enough or not? And
right.
when you finally do the math, you're like, wow, I need to be at $98 an hour just to break even. That happens all the time. We fix those problems all the time here at SyncedUp. But getting that math right is a pretty simple transactional shot in the arm type approach. You build a budget, keep that budget updated, and now your rates are based on actual mathematical formulas like, oh, it cost me this and this and this to do the job. My insurance is this much. My trucks are this much. My equipment is this much. How much do I have to mark up my direct costs to also cover my indirect costs and arrive at a break even, provide my profit? So the math problem it's a pretty transactional thing to solve. Like it's not magic. Like that's what SyncedUp does all day in, day out. But the second problem is a little more difficult to solve. That's the resources in the job. And that kind of connects back to what I was saying earlier, the templates and production rates. So when you say, I'm bidding a 500 square foot patio and I know it's going to take me 14 ton of stone just from experience, well, divide the 400 square foot by the 14 and come up with a production rate of like, oh, that means I need 2.38 tons per 100 square feet or whatever that is.
Whatever. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying though.
And now you turned it into a production rate where now a new kid can just plug in a measurement and bam, they have the right quantity.
Yeah.
Then now you got the estimate like out of your head, but we're not done yet because now we got to go out there and track at how much we actually used in the field. So that means in SyncedUp, it's like tracking those labor and materials in your mobile app so that it's like, wow, I bid 14 ton of this stone. It actually took me 16. Interesting. Right. And I watch on job number 2. It took me 18. Watch on job number 3. It took me 13. Why? And you start developing like a track record of like, hey, I can now look at every job and I can see my estimated resources, think man hours, materials, etc.
Yeah.
Against my actual resources consumed, man hours, materials, etc. And then when I'm making a mistake, I can be like, I'm not going to do that again. Next time I'm bidding a similar job, I'm updating my production rate to dial it in. And now you've
tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah. So now every time you go around it, every time you complete a job, you're creating a data trail that you can look back on for the next estimate, and the next estimate is more and more and more and more accurate.
And then what do you say to somebody who says, who has the time to track all that?
Well, it's pretty easy. So most of the time, if you are, so let's go to the templates and production rates. It's like, oh, let me just do this 5-minute estimate real quick. I don't have time to sit down and do production rates right now. I don't even know how to figure them out. Okay, cool. Let's say that usually when I ask people, how long does it take you to put a job estimate together? They'll say, an hour or two. Okay. Templates and production rates can cut that by 90%. So let's say that you bid 20 jobs a month. You go from an hour to 10 minutes. That's 50 minutes times 20 jobs. Do the math. Like it comes back to you tenfold, if not 100-fold.
Yeah.
The other side about the tracking is you just need your team to have a way to record their hours and also take pictures of their receipts of product they buy or use in the job, so that gets captured in real time, and it's not some office admin trying to put in paper timesheets in
and reconcile everything.
Exactly. Get the data at the source, the team in the field, and if you're like, well, my guys won't clock in, they won't take pictures of receipts for me. Well, not to sound heartless, but it's like, well, if you want paid, I need to know what you worked on. So
last time I checked,
Yeah.
We're paying you to do the job, and this is part of the job.
Yeah, it's like I can't pay you unless you tell me what job you were on, because if you just say I worked 40 hours and I don't know what job that's on, I'm blind. And I like to start off a little, let me go a little bit more the PR route. Like, okay, let's pretend we're doing a team meeting, a team huddle. We're starting to track our time. We're no longer doing the text me your hours on Friday. We're stopping that. We're saying we're tracking time on every single job. Every minute of payroll gets tracked to something. If it's unbillable, like I'm washing trucks on a rain day, fine, you're on shop time. There's a job called shop time, and you're tracking your unbillable time to that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're clocked in and clocked out to track your time, it's like, hey, and then the guys are like, well, I don't want to do that. This is going to take me way too much time. Why don't I just text my hours every Friday? Okay, fine. We all want to make more money, right? Let's start off on common ground. Yeah, we want to make more money. Cool. For us to make more money as a company, we have to know our numbers, meaning we have to know where our spend is going. If we don't know where our spend is going, we can't stop the leaks.
Yeah.
We can't stop the leaks. There's no money there for us to make more money. So here's how we're going to stop the leaks. We're going to track our time. Here's the app that we're going to track our time in, and it's going to feed right into our job costing automatically. And so that as the company makes more money, the company grows and thrives, so can we.
Right.
You can't, we all want to make more money, but you can't get money from somewhere it doesn't exist. You can't get blood from a stone, you know. So it's for us to grow in our own careers and our own earning power and the everything we want to do for our lives and careers, it's got to come from somewhere. And so let's start by killing off those cash leaks. And once the employees, I was an employee for 15 years. Once we as employees understand that, oh, this is connected to all of us, rising tide lifts all ships. Cool. Yeah. Now my context and my perspective is in the right place. And I'm putting, you better believe it, I'm going to put my hours in there. And if you want to put another carrot on it, bonus the guys based on if they're coming in on under hours, say they're 10% under estimated man hours, and there's no quality issues on the job, bonus them. You better believe it, they're going to be clocking in and out in real time so they can see exactly where they're at as they progress.
I love it though. And I mean, and then your compensation strategy is lined up with your profitability outcome. Yeah.
Yep.
So one of the things you mentioned a couple minutes ago was this idea of, is your, overhead at some level, trucks and insurance and shop and whatever, tied into the job? And like, are you looking at how each job is contributing to your overhead? So you're without putting words in your mouth, but you're kind of saying like, it's not just gross margin, it's contribution margin.
Yeah, net profit. Yeah.
On a job kind of perspective.
Yep.
When we're talking to, a bunch of contractors, landscapers, whatever, there's a lot of focus on gross margin and that number being like the goal. And few are thinking about the overall contribution to overhead. Can you just kind of break that down quickly so that people kind of understand the difference?
Yeah, I mean, each of the numbers play a unique role. Where we get ourselves into troubles when we look at one number thinking that's my KPI for a certain success metric when I'm getting my wires crossed. And it's like I'm reading a number to get my sense, and it's the wrong number. And gross profit is a great number just as a quick and dirty kind of how am I doing. But what a lot of people get in trouble on is they acquire too many overhead expenses for the amount of production or revenue they're producing. Or and what can happen then is like you're pricing your jobs, let's say at a 50% gross margin, but then your insurance goes up, you hire a marketing admin, you hire an office person, you buy another truck,
your office rent goes up.
Yeah, and suddenly that 50% gross margin is like, I'm not making any money. How's that happen? How's that possible? I processed more revenue than I ever did before, but at the end of the year, I open up my bank app and there's like, I'm wondering how I'm going to get through the winter. And it's because you're not paying attention. Gross margin does not pay attention to your overhead infrastructure. How much cost are you incurring just to keep the lights on? And if your production, your revenue, your earning capacity doesn't go up in relation to your overhead burden, that's where you get into trouble. So what we do to solve that problem is we build a budget and we focus on net profit, because net profit takes the overhead burden that you have in your business into consideration. What often happens when you go building a budget means tell the software every dollar your business spends to keep the lights on, labor, material, everything. And what it does is it says, okay, cool. for you to cover all of your labor, material, and subs, like your direct costs, and cover all of your indirect costs, insurance, website, admin, subscriptions, all that stuff. Your break even is this. And if you want to make a 10-20% net profit on top of that, then your revenue number has to be this.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, we know that you have, say, I'm just going to make a number up, 8,000 man hours capacity in your budget because you have 4 guys, 2,000 hours a year. So therefore, your man hour rate has to be this to cover your direct costs and your overhead and direct costs and your profit. So that's the magic formula. 3 numbers: direct costs, indirect costs, profit. Those 3 numbers added up together is your rate. That's your labor rate. And building a budget helps you rationalize and not guess. Switch from guessing what your labor rate should be to simply like, I have this many trucks. These are my bills every month or every year. And so therefore that means I need to charge this rate. And you know what happens sometimes? Sometimes people get to the other end of that experience and be like, I can never charge that much.
Right.
Or why is it so high? And the answer is they've got way too much equipment, way too much expenses. Or so you got 2 choices at that point. Either you produce more billable revenue without incurring any additional overhead costs, meaning you become more efficient with the overhead costs you do have, or you cut back overhead costs to be in proportion with the revenue that you can produce.
Right. And then with working with all these people, do you have some benchmarks of what your overhead as a percentage of revenue should look like?
Well, quick and dirty, I like to use the 30-30-30-10 rule. What I mean is 30% goes to labor in your average design build landscape contracting business. 30% goes to labor, 30% goes to material, 30% goes to overhead expenses, 10% goes to net profit. Now you could move and play with any of those numbers, say 5% in either direction and get 20% net profit, whatever. But if your overhead is higher than 30% of your revenue, it can be okay, but you want to be sure you need to have a budget telling you it's okay.
Yeah, that's cool. And there's obviously those factors too, because you could have a smaller footprint from like a Office Depot type of perspective and a large team that's going out and doing lots of work with a lot of direct costs that are associated to the work. So your indirect or overhead costs might not be quite as high because it's fixed and you've got a lean, mean operation.
Another thing that can happen is these owner-operator business models with, say, 2 to 5 employees, where they're super equipment heavy, very efficient, and can still produce a lot of billable work, meaning their revenue is high, but their equipment costs are also high. And so therefore, what can happen is their labor goes down because they employ less people, but their equipment and overhead heavy, so their overhead ratio is higher, but they're still okay when they get to the net profit number.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good way to look at the three most important numbers, and then the 30-30-30-10.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So then you look at this mindset being the primary thing that you're seeing hold people back. Whether, I mean, if it's intentional, it's no problem. But we're talking about the idea of, moving from owner operator to business owner. And you're talking about the idea of systems and processes being like one of the main things that someone has to do to get stuff out of their head so they can do someone else can do their thing. Now, when we're talking about it naturally from a synced up perspective, when we're talking about job costing, estimates, and knowing your numbers, big part of what you guys do and what you see every day. Do you see, when it comes to systems and processes, other parts of it that people struggle with, or where are people really successful when they do that, when they do it well, and they turn into that business owner? Have you seen some stories about people making that transition well?
Well, the two biggest things that the most successful people do is they get to a point where other people can estimate an accurately priced job, and they get to the point where everything is tracked. No ifs, ands, or buts. No exceptions. Everything is tracked. And what I mean by everything is every minute of payroll hours, billable labor is tracked to a job. That's what I mean by that. And every receipt is tracked to a job, like PO of some job, so that you can get to the end of that job and have estimated versus actual profitability, And if you not tracking, so let me explain the flip side. Let's say you do a great job of the estimating portion, and you've gotten to the point where you've gotten estimating out of your head and into a system and process, and someone else can do it for you, but you're not yet tracking it, or it's loosey-goosey. If people can just text you their hours and you pay them on payroll, but you're not documenting where that's going. Not tracking, this is an analogy I've used a time or two. It's like pretend you go to a shooting range, you put a rifle on the sandbags and put the crosshairs right on the bullseye and just carefully squeeze off a perfect shot, but then you never look where you hit.
Right.
You chamber another round, squeeze off what feels like yet another perfect shot, and you never look where you hit. You shoot the whole box of ammo, and you walk up to the target, and you see you completely missed. You made no money. And until you walk up to the target and look to see where you hit, you can't course correct the scope and dial it in to hit the bullseye.
Right.
And job costing is like walking up and looking to the target to see where you hit. If you never look where you hit, you can't course correct, meaning you can't go back and tweak your estimating production rates and templates for the next time. But if you look where you hit, you're like, ooh, man, that's the third job in a row that we've been low on this product. Or that's the third job of this type in a row that we've not had enough of man hours. Or we've had too many man hours. And too many is a good thing, right? You're gonna, but the point is sometimes we're overpricing ourselves in some services and underpricing ourselves in other services. And guess which types of services you'll get the most of? The ones that you're underpriced on.
Right.
Then, so that will suck you dry. So in terms of the two most common, the two attributes of the most successful contractors, it's like getting estimating out of your head and making tracking a non-negotiable discipline in your business.
Yeah, I love it.
Accept it.
And that accountability is all about the person leading the business. Like if people aren't tracking and you're like, oh, no one's tracking, I mean, you got to kind of look in the mirror, and it's kind of really on you to set the tone, right?
1000%.
So then when we're talking about this idea for tracking and starting to calibrate, essentially is kind of what you're referring to, right? As we see what we've hit, like what kind of timeline are we looking at? So like, let's say I'm a person, maybe I'm doing 3 million, I'm estimating myself. Now I want to come in with a system and make it so someone else can estimate and start tracking and then get some accountability and start calibrating. What do you see as like somebody who's trying to get into this, but they're like, I'm not sure if I have what it takes to do it. Like, what does that transition look like for someone, and how much, rigor is involved for someone to get it going?
I mean, you can do it completely manually to some extent in spreadsheets and cobble together all kinds of different things. But our average customer in Synced Up, they come in like maybe like, I'll start with like they're doing nothing. It's paper and pen.
Right.
Our average customer will take 2 weeks to kind of get their first couple libraries of templates and production rates set up, to get to the point where they're tracking hours on every job, tracking materials on every job. And they're, 2 weeks in, they've got estimated versus actual data on their phone on every job that they're doing.
Right.
And so it can be, we have some that are even doing it in a matter of 2 or 3 days. It just like some people just sit down and bang it out, and others kind of take the weekend or whatever to get it done.
Right. So this is not a crazy thing.
No, the hardest part is not doing it. The hardest part is the mindset and the discipline to force yourself to not let yourself revert back to your old ways, because it's unfamiliar territory. It's new things. It's like people, I'm not a computer guy, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Yeah, I know. The hardest part is overcoming that hurdle. Doing it is, we do it day in, day out all the time. And if you want to sit down for 2 days and hammer it out in 20 man hours, you can do it.
Right. And which is amazing, right? Because it's not something that has to take a long time. Like if you're out of shape and you need to go to the gym, doing it in 2 shifts of 20 hours, 10 hours each, you're not going to get in shape. You got to go consistently over time, over many years to really, really get her done. But with this, it's just like you put a little bit of discipline and focus on this thing. And that leads to another question then of like, am I too busy to do this now? Like, should I just like, is it kind of like planting a tree? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best day is today.
Well, that's a great question. And while I never want people to bite off more than they can chew, and owner operators are the busiest people on the face of the earth, they work 16-hour days, 7 days a week, But here's the thing. Most of us in that scenario are spending time on tasks that can be cut drastically. What I mean is, if I'm taking the whole thing I said earlier.
But the estimations,
alone. Most of us are spending an hour on every single estimate we do, and we're dreading it. We're putting it off. We're doing it at 11 o'clock at night because blah, blah, blah. A lot of our customers, they switch from that to I'm cranking out and sending you the estimate before I even leave your driveway, and I'm walking away with a signature and a down payment check, because it takes me 5 minutes, 2 minutes instead of an hour. And so you don't even go back to the office with a to-do list. It's done before you even leave.
How can you not do that?
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like mentally speaking, getting over the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to stop what feels like productive work, and I'm going to sit in an office and do some settings on a computer for a while to get my estimating process dialed in. It feels counterproductive, but literally the return on investment is immediate.
Well, it's like a slingshot, right? You got to pull it back a little bit so you can fire
Yeah.
this thing to go really far away. So I mean, I appreciate the way that you're sharing this, because I think a lot of people overestimate
Oh,
how much it is to actually just get it working right.
the fear, the like, this even for me? Can I even do this? Like, this is going to take me forever. Yeah, we often way outsize the problem in our heads, and then
Right.
I tell you the most common comment I hear from people: "Man, I cannot believe I waited so long to do this. I should have done this on day one."
Yeah,
I hear that all the time. Like, I was making it out to be way too big of a deal.
cool. So on that note, then, what does someone do if they want to check it out?
Basically, you can go to synkedup.com, which is spelled with a K, synkedup.com. And we have all kinds of videos there. You can book a call with our sales team and get on, and we'll show you exactly how it works. The whole point of the call is not for you to get sold to. The point of the call is to find out, like, hey, we solve a problem. Do you have the problem we solved? Do you want that problem solved? It's that simple. Like, if you don't want it, fine. No pressure. We're not going to try to sell you an ice to an Eskimo. Like,
No,
either
that's cool.
either you have the problem or you don't. But yeah, synkedup.com has all kinds of case studies, videos, information about the product. And if you want to reach me directly, I'm most active on Instagram. You can DM me on Instagram. Our handle is same thing, synkedup, synkedup. And that's where I pretty much stay in touch with the community. And that's still me on the account, obviously. So yeah.
That's cool. And so then you also do events too, right? Where people can come check
Yeah,
stuff out in like a group setting.
that's right.
How does
So
someone sign up for that? What does that look like? What are those events kind of focus on?
So we do an annual event called the Contractor Summit, and the model is kind of, we bring in some educational, motivational, inspirational type speakers. We also do a business tour of one of our customers, and this year we're doing it of Jeremy Swihart from J Squared Outdoor in Dayton, Ohio.
Cool.
So the event's going to be in Dayton, Ohio, October 3rd and 4th. So we do the business spotlight on his business, an incredible outdoor living contractor, one of the best out there. And he's just building a brand new shop, so you'll be able to see his whole new operation. It'll be awesome. And of course, our Synced Up team will be presenting some topics, as well as we have a few partners coming in to share, which I believe you'll be there.
Yeah, I think we are going to be there. We're looking forward to it. And then and so if I wanted to attend, and I'm not necessarily a customer of Synced Up, is this a cool place for me to go check out what's going on with everybody there? Like, I don't necessarily have to be part of the ecosystem yet.
100%. It is an open place. Like last year, 30% of the attendees were not Synced Up users. So yes, it's a place for you to, if you're curious, or if you just want to come and network and hang out with others that are in the grind of business just like you, even though you have no interest in Synced Up, come on, you're welcome. Like, we want you there. It's about promoting blue collar entrepreneurship, not necessarily a kumbaya session for Synced Up.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so then before we wrap up, what's a resource, like speaker, author, podcast, something that you think is just like a must for someone to check out, or something that really kind of hit you?
Well, we're going to have the author of the book Simple Numbers at the Contractor Summit this year. He's one of the speakers.
Is it Alan?
Greg Crabtree.
Oh, Crabtree.
Yes. And I just read that book or listened to it on audio, and it is, I mean, it's basically another man's take on everything we've been talking about here, with like
Right.
business and running it financially sound. And what I love about his style is he's so just matter of fact, no fluff, just tells you the way it is. Like, it's trust me, if you're a contractor that likes your hands in the dirt, you can listen to that book and get inspiration from it and get insight from it. So definitely I would promote that book. Another one that I would promote is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I think every business owner that's too busy to stop for 10 minutes and work on their business instead of in their business should listen to that book or read that book. I've been around Dan Martell's sphere of influence for a number of years now, and just some of the things he teaches in that book are like, dude, every business owner needs to hear this stuff.
Very
So
cool.
promote that. And if you want to come here, obviously, like I said, with Greg Crabtree and Simple Numbers, come hear him in person. Ask him, listen to the book, and then come ask him your questions in person.
Yeah, awesome. In October, you said 3rd, 4th?
3rd
second,
and
third,
4th. Yep.
third and fourth.
October 3rd and 4th in Dayton, Ohio.
And if I wanted to register for that, just go to syncedup.com and I'll look for.
Yep. Just Google Synced Up Contractor Summit. It'll come right up.
Awesome.
Yeah. And another resource I'll give you is we have conversations like the one you and I just had all the time on the Cost of Doing Business podcast. It's a podcast I run that I interview synced up customers on and just ask them 3 simple questions. You know, what would you do if you could go back to day one? What's the best advice you've ever been given? And what is the most difficult challenge you've ever overcome? And the discussions that come out of that are phenomenal.
Very cool. And that's on your podcast platform of choice?
Yep, any platform you want, Spotify, Apple, and it's just called The Cost of Doing Business.
The Cost of Doing Business. Awesome. Thank you, Weston, for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Robert. This was a lot.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Cheers.